Hey everybody. Today in class we worked on adding and subtracting decimals. So tonight we're going to move on to adding and subtracting fractions. A lot of the steps we're going to do are going to be similar to what we did with decimals, but remember when we add and subtract fractions, we have one step that we always have to do, which is find the lowest common denominator. Okay? So that's where we're going to start with this example on the left. If I'm looking at my denominators, I have 3 and I have 7. And I know that both of those numbers go into 21. So I'm going to rewrite my fractions here with 21 in the denominator. Okay. Now, if I want to change 4 over 3 into something over 21, I know I have to multiply my denominator by 7. Anything I multiply the denominator by, I also have to multiply the numerator by. So 7 times 3 gives us 21. 7 times 4 gives us 28. In the second fraction, we have 7 in the denominator. I know I need to multiply that by 3. That means I also need to multiply the numerator by 3. 5 times 3 is 15. So now my new expression is 28 over 21 plus negative 15 over 21. Now we're going to add these numbers together the same way we've been doing for a while. So after we find the least common denominator, our next step is we have to decide if our answer is positive or negative. I'm just going to look at the numerators here. And I notice that my positive 28 is larger in absolute value than the negative 15, right? I have more positives than negatives. So I know my answer is going to be positive. Just going to write that there for reference. I know my answer is going to be positive. And now I need to compute my answer. I know 28 and 15, because they're different signs, I know there's going to be some canceling here, so I'm actually going to need to subtract, right? 28 minus 15 gives me 3 and 1, 13. So my answer is going to be 13 over 21, and my sign is positive, so I'm going to leave it just like this. Cool? Let's look at another one. Alright, we have 2 more examples here. We're going to do the exact same steps. So my first step, I want to find that common denominator. Now, I have 2 and 6 as my denominators, and you know what? I actually know that 2 goes into 6. So 6 is going to be my lowest common denominator. So I'm going to rewrite my fractions with 6 in the denominator. Now my fraction on the right, I already have 1 over 6. This is going to stay the same, negative 1 over 6, because I don't need to change that one at all. Now my fraction over here on the left, I need to multiply 2 by 3. So I'm also going to need to multiply negative 5 by 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. Now I need to decide if my answer is going to be positive or negative. I have 2 negatives, and I'm adding them together, so I know my answer can't be positive. My answer is going to have to be negative. Now since they're the same sign, I know there's not going to be any canceling here. So if I'm going to do negative 15 plus negative 1, 15 plus 1 is 16 over 6. And I make my answer negative. Now, we're not quite done on this one. Okay, the final step we always have to do is make sure our answer is simplified, and I see that negative 16 over 6 has a common factor. I know I can divide both of these by 2. This is the trickiest part, is always making sure our answer is simplified. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and our answer is still negative. There we go. We have one more addition example over here. Got to look for that lowest common denominator. In this case, I know 3 and 4 both go into 12. So I'm going to have 12 here, the negative in front of it, and we're going to have a 12 here. Now since I have to do 4 times 3 to get 12 in the denominator, I'm going to do 4 times 1 up here. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. And on the right, I'm going to have to multiply both of these by 3, get 9. Now I'm looking at my numerators here. If I'm going to add negative 4 plus 9, my 9 has a bigger absolute value than my negative 4, so even though we have different signs, my answer is going to be positive. And because they have different signs, I know there's going to be some cancellation. So I'm going to do 9 minus 4. That's going to give me 5 over 12. I'm going to keep my answer positive. Get my answer right there. 5 and 12, there's nothing I can divide both of these by. So that's my final answer. That's already simplified. Before we wrap up here, we should take a look at a couple of subtraction problems. Remember, when we're subtracting, sometimes it's actually easier to turn it into an addition problem. So let's rewrite this first problem here as an addition problem. Negative 1/2 plus, we do the opposite of the second number, so instead of negative 4/5, it's going to be plus 4/5. We're going to look for our least common denominator now. 2 and 5 both go into 10. Our first fraction is negative. And our second fraction, we get 10 there, and that's a positive fraction, so we'll leave it as positive. Now I know I have to do 2 times 5, so I'm also going to do negative 1 times 5. So that'll give me negative 5 up here. In my second fraction, I know I have to do 5 times 2 to get 10, so I'm going to have to do 4 times 2, and that'll give me 8. So here I have negative 5 plus 8 in the numerators. I know my answer is going to be positive because 8 has a larger absolute value than 5. And I know there's going to be some canceling, negative 5 plus 8. So I'm going to have to subtract the absolute values. 8 minus 5 is 3. My denominator stays the same. My answer is positive, and I cannot simplify that. That one is done. Our second example over here for subtraction, once again, I'm going to change this to an addition problem. 1/4 plus negative 5 over 6, right? Changing it from minus positive 5 over 6 to plus negative 5 over 6. Now my lowest common denominator here, 4 and 6, I know both go into 12. So I'm going to change both of those. 4 times 3 is 12, so I'll multiply 1 by 3 and get 3. And I know 6 times 2 is 12. 5 times 2 will give me 10. So I have 3/12 plus negative 10/12. So I got to think here again. What is my answer going to be? 3 and negative 10. My negative 10 now has the bigger absolute value. So I know my answer is going to be negative. And because my signs are different, positive 3 plus negative 10, I know there's going to be some cancellation. 10 minus 3 gives me 7 over 12. Make sure my answer is negative. And there we are.